My curriculum for Apocalypse as philosophy. I wanted to take a shift from philosophy of horror, even though it's Halloween, because Where We've Made It Dark came out last week, and it's literary apocalyptic fiction with zombies that is the full philosophical application of who we are with that world, how we get to the other side of that, what's lying over there. So using philosophical structures to engage that while avoiding our ideological fill-in answers. That's truly my recommendation for if you want to engage philosophy with apocalypse is to pick up Where We've Made It Dark. But I have a footing to offer with a close reading of one little passage that I think will start the conversation. It's more complicated than just like read XYZ book because, okay, so philosophy generally doesn't engage apocalypse too often. You're usually thinking about what is life, who are we, and and it's only with Kant and cogito and the transcendental turn that we actually approach philosophy as apocalypse, where we understand ourselves as properly speaking apocalyptic, a way in which the world falls apart rather than finding our place within the world. That's the huge shift that happens with Descartes and Kant, basically. So you can't think about apocalypse, with Plato, for example. You can find other thoughts about philosophy as well. Maurice Blanchot has an essay that's referred to a bit. Derrida talks about the apocalypse a bit. It's been a while since I've read that. But the main thing you need with philosophy and apocalypse is some engagement with psychoanalysis too. There are certain ideas and framings that you need to actually get to how we're engaging apocalypse. You need an idea of fantasy, subjectivity, the unconscious and unalive drive. Those are the same thing. You have to not just postulate the way things are, but get to the way in which we're connected to it, the way in which we're connecting. Like, why do we need to watch the apocalypse happen? It's why this spectacle? What's so mesmerizing about it? You need psychoanalysis to answer that question. The ultimate philosopher of the apocalypse is Slavoj Zizek. I'm a Zizekian, like straight up. I've read all of Slavoj for the most part, at least. I apply his work to my work. He is the philosopher of the apocalypse because that's what he talks about it throughout his work, throughout the decades of his tomes, all the things he's written. So I can't just say read these couple of books and you'll have a firm idea. You need a full engagement. But I have a passage that I think encapsulates things really nicely, and that's in Tearing with the Negative. It's an early work of his, and it's one of my favorites. This is one of the best works he's written. There are so many ways you can get into Zizek. You can just read Sublime Objective Ideology. You can listen to the Why Theory podcast with Todd McGowan and Ryan Engley. You can just listen to some lectures on YouTube for a while. So that doesn't matter. Just listen to page 62 for a bit. Let's just talk about it. So we're talking about Alien, and Ripley, and which is a favorite topic. So it's here that we encounter cogito, Descartes' I think, therefore I am, at its purest, when what will become the subject constitutes itself by rejecting the slimy substance of jouissance, enjoyment. Just think of it in terms of enjoyment. It's therefore not sufficient to say that it, the alien thing, is a projection of our own repressed. It's not a mirror image. It's outside of us. The I itself constitutes itself by way of rejection of the thing, by way of assuming a distance toward the substance of enjoyment. In this punctuality of pure horror, she thinks. She's reduced to pure thought. So the final girl is, confronting the alien, confronting the slasher, has lost all of their identity and their place in life. They've lost their very being, and they are this structure of I think. That's the persistence we're getting to. So the moment we recoil from this stain of horror and retreat to the haven of our being, some discentered place, it begins to think. This then is the Lacanian spirit is the bone, which just think about it in terms of how we're connected to reality. We'll just leave it at that. The pure I think takes place only when the subject endures the confrontation with the senseless stain of jouissance. So this is why you can't like engage apocalypse without a zombie figure. The zombie is this unending enjoyment. Enjoyment is itself immortal, like unaliving. It continues on. So it's from this stain that impossibly says, "I am unalive." It's alive enough to speak, but it's unalive. So this is the space of the zombie. So it's here that cogito, qua the point of thought, bereft of being, qua non-existent, impossible fantasy gaze, by way of which I observe my own non-being. So here we're at apocalypse. This is the fantasy gaze from which we observe our own non-being. That's the huge draw of the apocalypse. This, Huck Finn watching your own funeral happen. This is the essence of fantasy itself, like the very foundation of it. It's also the Frankenstein watching your parents make you. At the very moment of my reduction to a pure cogito qua impossible gaze, so you need the gaze to get to your cogito, your structure, your subjectivity. Knowing that you're being watched and seen, but not being able to see those pupils themselves. So reflective lenses, the slasher mask that has holes where the eye should be. So this is not recognition from a intersubjective me and you relation. This is the object catching you in its gaze. At this very moment of my reduction to a pure cogito qua the impossible gaze, in relation to this gaze, a formless slime of the substance of jouissance had to emerge from somewhere else. It's confronting this unending enjoyment that carries on without us, despite ourselves. So the main thing to keep in mind is the apocalypse doesn't get us to like this annihilation of ourselves, this engagement with like the rocks around us. There is a way in which we are caught in the gaze of reality around us. This secondary phantasmatic attachment that sticks to us, that doesn't go away. We live according to life with alien figures, zombie figures, ghosts, slashers. So we put ourselves against these things by our own thought. Thought is so thought here is an engagement with apocalypse, and it is a removal from our own being, from our own quiddity. We step out of our identity and coordinates and lot in life. The world falls away, and this is what persists. When we engage the apocalypse, we undergo this, we become final girls ourselves. We embrace the way in which the world doesn't have any outside guarantees. That's how we arrive at ourselves. So when we pull away the world, this is the very thing that persists, basically. Cogito and this unalive figure. And we resist it, and that point of resisting is thought, as not positivity, but negativity, this inherent negativity, this void in reality. When we approach that and fill it in with some answer that gives us a sense of being, a sense of wholeness, that's the ideological stand-in from getting to this point, to shirk back from the radical potential of engaging who we are with that world. So this is why I talk about unalive drive in my bio. This persistence is what we engage when we talk about apocalypse in fiction, how we carry on while the world falls away, while our own bodies fall away, what persists through that. Now, this heads into many different directions beyond this point, but this is the fundamental point from which we can actually talk about these things.